It was a bright, sunny afternoon in Pinewood Lane. This was a small, quiet street where nothing fun or exciting ever seemed to happen. At least that's what everyone thought. The houses sat in neat rows with green lawns and little flower gardens. Birds chirped and the air smelled like fresh grass. It was the kind of place where you'd expect everyone to get along. But looks can trick you, and this little street was hiding something big. Let me tell you about Tim. Tim was a guy who lived on Pinewood Lane, and he was super quiet. He wasn't the type to make a fuss. He didn't throw loud parties or blast music late at night. Nope, Tim was the kind of neighbor who kept to himself. Every weekend you could see him outside, pushing his lawnmower back and forth. The whir of the mower was the loudest sound he ever made. When people walked by, he'd give a little wave and a friendly hello. That was it. Simple, right? Most folks didn't think much about Tim. He seemed boring, like nothing special. But here's the thing nobody knew. Tim had a secret. It wasn't something huge like buried treasure or a spaceship in his garage. No, it was smaller but way more fun. In his front yard, right next to his pretty red roses, sat a little garden gnome. This wasn't just any gnome. It had a bright red hat that pointed up to the sky, and its face had a big, cheeky grin, like it was laughing at a joke nobody else got. The gnome's tiny hands rested on its round belly, and its eyes sparkled with mischief. To Tim, it was just a silly decoration, something to make his yard look a little happier. But that gnome, oh, it was about to shake things up in a way nobody saw coming. Now let's talk about the other side of the street. That's where Karen lived. Not just any Karen, she was the HOA Karen. If you don't know what that means, let me explain. HOA stands for Homeowners Association. It's a group of people who make rules for the neighborhood, like no pink flamingos in your yard or no basketball hoops on the street. Karen was the bossiest of them all. She loved those rules more than anything. She'd walk around with a clipboard, checking every house to make sure nobody dared to break them. If your grass was too tall or your mailbox was the wrong color, Karen would know. And she'd let you know too, with a big frown and a loud tusk. Karen wasn't tall or scary looking. She had short brown hair and wore glasses that slid down her nose. But her eyes, they were sharp, always watching. She'd peek out from behind her curtains, spying on everyone. If something wasn't perfect, she'd march right over and tell you to fix it. The neighbors called her HOA Karen behind her back because she acted like she owned the whole street. To her, Pinewood Lane was her kingdom, and those rules were her laws. Nobody dared to argue, except maybe Tim. See, Karen didn't like Tim's garden gnome one bit. The first time she saw it, her nose wrinkled up like she smelled something bad. That little gnome, with its red hat and sneaky smile, drove her crazy. "It's ugly," she'd mutter to herself. "It doesn't belong here." To Karen, everything in the neighborhood had to look just right, neat, clean, and boring. A goofy gnome with a big grin, that was trouble. It didn't fit her perfect picture of Pinewood Lane. She decided right then and there that it had to go. That gnome was like a crime waiting to happen, and Karen was going to be the one to stop it. Tim didn't know it yet, but his quiet little life was about to get loud. That gnome wasn't just sitting there to look cute, it was about to start a war. A war between Tim, who just wanted to enjoy his yard, and Karen, who thought she could boss everyone around. The neighbors didn't see it coming. They thought Pinewood Lane was too sleepy for drama. But oh, they were wrong. Something big was brewing, and it all started with that tiny, grinning gnome. Picture this, it's a Saturday afternoon. The sun is shining and Tim is out front watering his roses. The water sprays in little sparkles and the roses look so pretty against the green grass. The gnome sits there, happy as can be, its red hat glowing in the sunlight. Tim smiles at it, thinking how it makes his yard feel fun. He doesn't care what anyone thinks, he likes it, and that's enough. But across the street, Karen is watching. She's standing at her window, curtains pulled back just enough to peek out. Her arms are crossed and her lips are pressed tight. She sees that gnome and it's like a thorn in her side. How dare he, she thinks. That thing is ruining everything. She grabs her clipboard and starts writing notes. She's already planning her attack. To her, that gnome isn't just a decoration, it's a rebel breaking her rules. And Karen doesn't let rebels win. Tim finishes watering and heads inside, wiping his hands on his jeans. He has no idea what's coming. He's just happy to have a sunny day and a quiet yard. But Karen, she's not happy, she's mad, and when HOA Karen gets mad, things get messy. She's already thinking about what she'll say, how she'll march over and tell Tim to get rid of that gnome. She's sure she's right, she's sure everyone will agree with her. But what she doesn't know is that Tim isn't as simple as he looks. There's more to him, and that gnome, than meets the eye. So here where the fun starts. Tim's just living his life, minding his own business. Karen's ready to start a fight over something as silly as a garden gnome. The rest of Pinewood Lane is about to get a front row seat to the show. Who's right? Was Karen smart to hate that gnome, or was she just looking for trouble? Was Tim really as quiet and boring as he seemed, or was there something special hiding behind his friendly wave? Let's think about it for a second. Imagine you're Tim. You put a funny little statue in your yard because it makes you smile. Then your neighbor comes stomping over, saying it's wrong, saying it doesn't belong. Would you fight back, or would you just let her win? And what if you had a secret, something nobody knew, that could turn the whole thing upside down? That's what's happening here. Tim's got something up his sleeve, and Karen's about to walk right into it. The sun starts to dip lower in the sky, painting Pinewood Lane with golden light. The gnome sits there, still grinning, like it knows what's coming. Tim's inside, maybe sipping a glass of water, thinking the day's almost over. But it's not over, not even close. Karen's plotting, and that gnome is the spark that's going to light everything up. The neighbors don't know it yet, but they're about to see a battle they'll never forget. So what do you think? Was Karen right to get so upset about a little gnome? Or was she just picking a fight because she could? And what about Tim? What's his secret? Is he really just a quiet guy with a lawnmower, or is there more to him than that? Stick around, because this story's just getting started. That gnome's got a tale to tell, and it's going to be a wild one. Let's find out what happens next. Sunny Hills was a peaceful little neighborhood where kids played in the streets and dogs barked at squirrels. The houses were neat, the lawns were green, and everything seemed perfect except for one person, Karen Wilson. Karen was the boss of the Homeowners Association, or HOA for short. She acted like she owned the whole place. She walked around with a clipboard in one hand and a big rulebook in the other. Her eyes were sharp, and her frown could make even a big, tough grizzly bear run away scared. Every single day, Karen marched up and down the streets looking for trouble. She'd stop and stare at a mailbox that wasn't perfectly straight. "This is crooked," she'd yell, writing it down on her clipboard, or she'd measure someone's grass with a tiny ruler. "Half an inch too tall," she'd grumble, shaking her head. Everyone in Sunny Hills knew Karen's rules were super strict and nobody wanted to get on her bad side. Nobody, that is, except Timmy Parker. Timmy was a quiet guy who lived in a small house with a bright red door. He didn't talk much, but he always waved hello to his neighbors. In his front yard, he had a little garden with flowers and one special thing, a garden gnome. The gnome was small, with a pointy hat and a big smile painted on its face. Timmy loved that gnome. He'd put it right by his porch where everyone could see it. But Karen, she hated it. One sunny afternoon, Karen stomped up to Timmy's house. Her shoes clicked on the sidewalk and her clipboard bounced against her hip. She stopped right in front of the gnome and pointed at it with a long, bony finger. "This thing is an eyesore," she snapped, her voice loud enough for the whole street to hear. "It's ugly and it's against the rules. Rule 47, Section B says no tacky decorations allowed." Timmy was sitting on his porch, sipping a glass of lemonade. He looked up at Karen and smiled. "I like my gnome, Karen," he said calmly. "It's not hurting anyone, it's staying right where it is." Karen's face turned pink, then red, then almost purple. She wasn't used to people talking back to her. "You'll be sorry," she hissed, crossing her arms so tight her clipboard almost bent. "This gnome is a problem and I'm going to fix it." Then she turned around and marched off, her nose in the air. Timmy just shrugged and took another sip of his lemonade. He didn't yell back or get mad. He just patted the gnome's little hat and went back to relaxing. But Karen, oh, she was steaming mad. She pulled out her pen and started scribbling notes on her clipboard so fast the paper almost ripped. She took pictures of the gnome with her phone, snap, 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 like it was some kind of criminal. "I'll teach him a lesson," she muttered under her breath as she walked away. "He can't break my rules." The neighbors saw it all happen. They peeked out their windows and whispered to each other. "Karen's really mad this time," said Mrs. Jenkins, who lived next door. "She's been talking about that gnome for weeks." "Yeah," said Mr. Lopez from across the street. "She told me she's got a big plan to get rid of it. She's not gonna let Timmy win." But here's the weird thing. Timmy didn't look worried at all. Not one bit. The next day, Karen came back with her rule book and read out loud all the things Timmy was doing wrong. "No tacky decorations, no bright colors that hurt my eyes," she shouted, waving the book in his face. Timmy just smiled again and said, "I think my gnome's pretty cool, Karen." That made her even angrier. She stomped her foot so hard a bird flew out of a nearby tree. "You're breaking the rules, Timmy Parker," she yelled. "And I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." She stormed off again, muttering about meetings and fines and all kinds of trouble she'd bring down on Timmy. The neighbors started to wonder, why was Karen so upset about a little gnome? It wasn't loud or messy or dangerous. It was just a gnome. And why wasn't Timmy scared? Most people shook in their shoes when Karen got mad, but Timmy acted like it was no big deal. He'd water his flowers every morning, humming a happy little song. Sometimes he'd even talk to the gnome, saying stuff like, "Looking good today, buddy." One night, Mrs. Jenkins saw something strange. She was up late, peeking out her window when she spotted Timmy in his yard. The moon was bright, and there he was, standing by the gnome. He bent down and whispered something to it. Mrs. Jenkins couldn't hear what he said, but it looked like he was smiling. That's weird, she thought. Why's he talking to a statue? She told Mr. Lopez about it the next day. Maybe Timmy's a little goofy, Mr. Lopez said, scratching his head. Or maybe he's up to something. Up to something? Mrs. Jenkins asked. Like what? I don't know, Mr. Lopez said, but he's not scared of Karen, and that's not normal. She's got the whole neighborhood afraid of her clipboard. Karen kept coming back to Timmy's house day after day. Each time she'd yell louder and wave her rulebook harder. This gnome has to go, she'd shout. It's ruining Sunny Hills. She'd glare at Timmy with her scary bear eyes, but he'd just nod and say, nope, it's staying. One time she brought a measuring tape and measured the gnome from top to bottom. It's too tall, she cried. Rule 12 says decorations can't be over 18 inches. Timmy peeked out his door and laughed. It's 17 inches, Karen, I checked. That made her so mad she threw her pen on the ground and stomped on it. You think you're so smart, she yelled. Just wait, Timmy Parker, I've got something big planned for you and your stupid gnome. The neighbors heard that and got nervous. Karen's big plans usually meant trouble. Last year, she made Mr. Lopez paint his whole house because she didn't like the color. The year before that, she fined Mrs. Jenkins for having too many flowers. What was she going to do to Timmy? But Timmy, he didn't even blink. He'd sit on his porch, watch Karen stomp away, and then go back to his flowers. He'd hum his little tune, and pat his gnome like it was his best friend. The neighbors couldn't figure it out. Was he brave, was he silly, or was he hiding something big? Every time Karen left, she'd mutter louder about teaching him a lesson. Her voice echoed down the street, and her clipboard looked ready to burst with all her angry notes. The tension in Sunny Hills grew thicker, like a storm cloud hanging over Timmy's house. Everyone knew something was coming. Karen wasn't going to stop, and Timmy wasn't going to back down. What was he hiding? Why wasn't he scared of Karen's threats? Nobody knew, not the neighbors, not Karen, not even the birds in the trees. But one thing was clear, this fight over a little gnome was about to get a whole lot bigger. Weeks went by in Sunny Hills, and Karen's yelling about Timmy's garden gnome got louder and louder. She wasn't just mad anymore, she was super mad. Every day she found new ways to bug Timmy. She wrote him letters, stuffing his mailbox with big, angry notes. Get rid of that gnome, the letters said in big, red letters. It's against the rules. She even called his phone and left voicemails. Timmy Parker, you better listen to me, her voice screeched through the speaker. That gnome is ruining our neighborhood. But that wasn't all. One evening, Karen called a big HOA meeting. She stood in front of all the neighbors, holding up a picture of Timmy's gnome like it was a wanted poster. This thing is a disgrace, she shouted, shaking the photo so hard it almost ripped. It's ugly, it's tacky, and it's against Rule 47. We need to vote to ban all gnomes right now." The neighbors sat quietly in their chairs. They nodded their heads, too scared to say no to Karen. Her clipboard and her mean stare made everyone nervous. Nobody wanted to be her next target. Meanwhile, Timmy didn't seem to care one bit. He stayed calm, like nothing was wrong. Every morning, he'd walk out to his yard with a watering can. He'd sprinkle water on his flowers, pat his gnome on its pointy hat, and smile. Sometimes he'd even wink at the gnome like they were sharing a secret joke. The neighbors started to notice. "Why's he so happy?" Mrs. Jenkins whispered to Mr. Lopez one day. "Karen's trying to get him in big trouble." "I don't know," Mr. Lopez said, scratching his chin. "He's acting like he's got a trick up his sleeve." Then something really weird happened. Late one night, when the moon was big and bright, Mrs. Jenkins couldn't sleep. She peeked out her window and saw Timmy in his yard. He was standing by the gnome, talking to it. His voice was quiet, but Mrs. Jenkins heard him say, "Don't worry, buddy, we'll show her soon." Mrs. Jenkins blinked. "Show her what?" she thought. She rubbed her eyes to make sure she wasn't dreaming. Timmy gave the gnome a little pat, then walked back inside like nothing happened. The next morning, she told everyone she could find. "I saw Timmy talking to his gnome," she said, her eyes wide. "He said they're gonna show Karen something." Talking to a gnome," Mr. Lopez laughed. "Maybe he's just silly." "Or maybe he's up to something big," Mrs. Jenkins said, crossing her arms. "He's not scared of Karen at all." The whispers spread fast. Neighbors started watching Timmy more closely. Was he crazy? Was he just playing a game? Or was there something about that gnome they didn't know? Every time Karen marched by with her clipboard, Timmy would just sit on his porch and wave. "Morning, Karen," he'd say, all cheerful. That made her huff and puff even more. One day, Karen stuck a big sign in Timmy's yard. It said, "Remove this gnome or else," in huge black letters. Timmy didn't take it down. He just moved it a little so his flowers could get more sun. Karen saw that and stomped her foot. "You're asking for trouble, Timmy Parker," she yelled. Timmy grinned. "I like a little trouble," he said, winking at his gnome again. The neighbors couldn't figure it out. Karen was like a volcano ready to explode, but Timmy acted like it was all a big joke. "He's gotta be hiding something," Mr. Lopez said one afternoon, watching Timmy hum a happy tune. "Nobody's that calm when Karen's mad." Things kept getting wilder. Karen started knocking on doors, telling everyone how awful Timmy's gnome was. "It's making our neighborhood look bad," she told Mrs. Jenkins. "He's breaking every rule in the book." Mrs. Jenkins nodded, but she didn't say much. She kept thinking about Timmy talking to the gnome. What did he mean by "we'll show her"? She wasn't the only one wondering. Kids on the street started making up stories. "Maybe the gnome's magic," one boy said. "Maybe it talks back to him," a girl giggled. Nobody knew the truth, but everyone was curious. Then one sunny morning, Karen finally lost it. She had enough of Timmy and his gnome. She grabbed her phone and stormed over to his yard, her face redder than a fire truck. She stood right in front of the gnome, pointed at it, and dialed 911. "Hello, police," she said, her voice loud and shaky. "There's a dangerous man in my neighborhood." The operator on the phone sounded confused. "A dangerous man?" they asked. "Yes," Karen cried. "His name is Timmy Parker, and he's breaking laws with this hideous gnome. It's against the rules, and I don't feel safe anymore." The operator tried to calm her down. "Ma'am, please take a deep breath," they said. "What's the gnome doing?" "It's just sitting there being ugly," Karen shouted. "He won't get rid of it and it's driving me crazy. Send the police now." She hung up the phone and crossed her arms, glaring at the gnome like it was her worst enemy. She didn't see Timmy watching from his window. He was leaning on the sill, a small grin on his face. His eyes sparkled like he knew something she didn't. And here's the kicker: Karen didn't notice what was happening behind her. Something or someone was already there, waiting in the shadows. The neighbors peeked out their windows, holding their breath. Karen had called the police. This was big. They'd never seen her this mad before. "She's really doing it," Mrs. Jenkins whispered to herself. "She's gonna get Timmy in trouble." But Timmy didn't move. He didn't run out yelling or try to hide the gnome. He just stood there, watching Karen with that little grin. It was like he wasn't scared at all, like he'd been waiting for this moment. What was going on? Why was he so calm when the police were on their way? The air in Sunny Hills felt heavy, like a storm was coming. Karen paced back and forth in Timmy's yard, muttering to herself. "He'll see," she said. "He can't win against me." She kicked a pebble and glared at the gnome again. She had no idea what was about to happen. The neighbors kept whispering. "What's Timmy gonna do?" they asked each other. "Why's he smiling?" Nobody had answers, but they couldn't look away. Something big was building, and it all started with that little gnome. Karen thought she was in charge, but Timmy, he was acting like he had a secret, one that was about to change everything. The sun was shining bright in Sunny Hills, but the air felt thick with excitement. A police car rolled up to Timmy's house, its red and blue lights flashing like a fireworks show. Karen stood in Timmy's yard, her arms crossed and a big smirk on her face. She thought she'd finally won. She pointed at the little garden gnome with its pointy hat and painted smile. "There it is," she shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. "That ugly gnome is ruining our neighborhood. Arrest Timmy right now." The neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains, holding their breath. Karen had called the police over a gnome. This was the biggest thing to happen in Sunny Hills in forever. Mrs. Jenkins clutched her coffee mug, whispering, "Oh no, Timmy's in trouble now." Mr. Lopez stood on his porch, shaking his head. "Karen's gone too far," he muttered. Everyone thought Timmy was about to get hauled away. But then the police car door opened and out stepped Officer Jake. He was tall, with a shiny badge and a friendly grin. Karen's smirk vanished. Her eyes got wide and her jaw dropped so low it nearly hit the ground. "Wait a second," she stammered, pointing at Jake. You know Timmy. Timmy stepped out of his house, cool as a cucumber. He wasn't shaking or scared, not one bit. He walked down his porch steps, hands in his pockets, like he was just going for a stroll. The neighbors leaned closer to their windows. What was happening? Why was Timmy so calm? And why was Officer Jake smiling at him like they were old pals? Timmy stopped right next to his gnome and looked at Karen. "Oh, Karen," he said, his voice smooth and steady. "Did I forget to tell you, I'm not just a guy with a gnome, I'm a retired detective." The neighbors gasped so loud it sounded like a gust of wind. "A detective? Timmy, the quiet guy who watered his flowers and waved hello?" Mrs. Jenkins dropped her coffee mug and it clattered on her kitchen floor. Mr. Lopez's mouth fell open. Even the kids playing down the street stopped their game to stare. Karen blinked fast, like she didn't believe her ears. "A detective," she squeaked, her voice all wobbly. "You're lying." Timmy shook his head and patted his gnome's hat. "Nope, it's true," he said. "And this gnome, it's not just for show, it's got a hidden camera inside for security." Karen's face turned redder than a ripe tomato. Her eyes bugged out and she took a step back. "A camera," she whispered, her voice barely loud enough to hear. "In the gnome." "Yup," Timmy said, crossing his arms. "It's been recording everything. Like when you came into my yard last week and tried to steal my gnome in the middle of the night." The neighbors gasped again, even louder this time. Karen, stiling, Mrs. Jenkins clutched her heart. "I knew she was up to no good," she whispered to herself. Mr. Lopez shook his head. "Sneaking around at night, that's low, Karen." Karen's face went from red to white. She opened her mouth to talk, but all that came out was a weird squeak, like a mouse caught in a trap. She pointed at Timmy, then at the gnome, then back at Timmy. That's not true," she finally yelled, but her voice shook. "You're making it up." Officer Jake stepped forward, his arms crossed. He wasn't smiling anymore. "Actually, Karen," he said, "I've seen the footage. That camera caught you breaking rules left and right, trespassing, trying to steal, even throwing trash in Timmy's yard to make it look messy. Want to explain yourself?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She sputtered and stammered, but no words came out. The neighbors started whispering to each other. "She tried to steal the gnome," one said. "And she threw trash," another gasped. "That's why she kept saying